Good afternoon. My name is Callie Martin. I serve as a student senator here at HVCC, and I'm honored to welcome you to Voices, a library lecture series. We'd like to begin the program with an acknowledgement that today we're gathered on the sacred homelands of the Mohican people, and they are the stewards of this land. Today, the community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Munsee Mohican Nation. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present. Voices presents speakers on timely and enduring issues each semester to broaden and enrich the scope of studies here at Hudson Valley Community College. Please fill out the survey as these help inform our future programming. Today, Voices presents Tony Iadicicco. Tony Iadicicco is an award-winning artist and the executive director at Albany Center Gallery. He is also a community volunteer who works tirelessly to connect people with the arts. He recognizes the importance and works to make art more accessible, while also inspiring and uplifting individuals through the arts. Tony first started as a volunteer with Albany Center Gallery before becoming the creative director in 2011, and then a year later becoming the executive director. Additionally, he's the curator of the Capitol Walls mural program and the Capital Region. He prioritizes strengthening the community through the arts and artistes. Tony is always working on multiple projects, as well as frequently guest speaks for organizations about the business of art, culture, and art itself. He promotes the creative development of our next generation of leaders and creatives. Tony's received awards such as the Creatives Under 40 Award, Norman S. Wright's Arts and Culture Award, Tomorrow's Masters of Today Award by the Albany Institute of History and Art, Arts Ambassador Volunteer of the Year Award from Stakeholders Incorporated, as well as recognized as one of Albany Business Review's 40 Under 40. Without further ado, Director Tony.
Thank you. Hello, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Yeah. Awesome, cool. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and for joining. For people that are online or wherever you're watching it, I'm excited to have a conversation about art, community, public art, and ways to make our spaces more vibrant, colorful, accessible, and unique for artists to share stories. So I'll wander around, but I do have to go back to click on this just to go through things. But as a exciting start to the day, we're actually 2023. We're in the process of planning probably 4 to 5 murals for this upcoming year. So what you hear now is years of work, but right now as we speak, we're actually planning for this upcoming year's work. We're excited to partner with artists, community members, business owners, supporters, and those alike. So thank you. Just so as a quick one before we get going, this one is actually based in Schenectady with Oscar Deshawn and Deshawn. I'm blanking. No, Oscar and Deshawn. Oscar and Deshawn, 2 artists. So they were actually a duo working together to create this piece. They, based out of Schenectady, New York, really just wanted to come together to create a piece. And the individual in the right-hand corner is actually Oscar's youngest son. So some of these pieces that we're going through, when people walk by or drive by or experiencing them, they might not get the full story of what these pieces are, but the idea is that it brings hope, inspiration, connects with people, and then knowing that each mural is just a story for one artist, but there's thousands of stories, thousands of open spaces, and that's what we're trying to help fill. So I'll jump into our video about the Capitol Walls mural program.
Capitol Walls is a public art initiative of Albany Barn and Albany Center Gallery, with foundational support from Park Albany. This project seeks to inspire our community with uplifting, educational, and thought-provoking works of public art. It started with Bluebirds by Michael Conlon in 2016. Now, in 2021, there are 16 murals from different artists who are local, regional, and international. As we continue to build the mural program, we are excited to see what the artists create and the stories they tell.
Cool. So that's a quick overview of the past 6 years with the gallery and the murals. For the gallery, we're coming up on we actually just celebrated our 45th year anniversary. And it's exciting because all of this work that we've done has been probably since 2016 with the Bluebirds. And really, that opportunity really allowed us to get out into the community more, work with organizations, individuals, and different partners. And a lot of what we do is through partnership. I just have to get to my main screen. Sorry, y'all. Thank you. There it is. Cool. So how it started was with the Bluebirds. And if you can see on the left-hand side, that's kind of a distant shot from where under the bridge is. It's about a 6-story mural. And the conversation started with this piece of where do we put art? How does that bring people into the community? How does that welcome people? The artist that worked on this piece is artist Michael Conlin, was living in Albany at the time. When the funders reached out to us, which is the Albany Parking Authority for this project, they wanted to add a splash of color. So the first vision of this piece was artist Mike Conlin creating a paintball splatter along the side of the building. When we went and presented that back to the funders, we said the splash of color, but what does that mean for the community that's going to experience this piece? So working with the artists, doing the curation of the process is having conversations of what do we want this piece to do? What do we want people to connect with it? So Mike Conlin then created another mock-up of the bluebird, which is a New York State bird. And it was one bird that was actually centered in the middle of this piece. With this gap in between the structure, it actually makes it kind of challenging to connect some of the images and what the stories are telling. So the one bird looked like it actually flew right into the wall. So when we presented that, the funder said, well, now the bird looks like it just flew and got flattened because of that building. Part of that conversation, again, is how do we not alter what artists are creating, but also help them get feedback, take feedback, and make adjustments based on what it is that we're looking to see. So then the bridge, as you see, it's the exit ramp into downtown Albany. It's one of the entryways into downtown Albany. Artists got in their car, used a camera to kind of film going into it. So that's where this motion of these birds kind of flowing down, similar to how you would be as if you're driving down from the ramp. And that's kind of how that one piece started. But from a year and a half of planning, it takes about 2 weeks to complete this piece. Some of the techniques that we use is a pounce machine, so where you're doing kind of an old school style of creating an outline and then putting holes every inch, unraveling the paper, laying it against each panel, and then pouncing it with like a chalk. And that creates a soft outline. And then you actually connect the dots to create the figure. And then from there, the artist then painted it with spray paint and then also exterior latex paint. Different techniques that I'll show throughout this conversation are grid techniques, projection techniques, and some there's actually community involvement to where these pieces going 40, 50 feet in the air, the lifts, the insurance, bless you, all that goes into it. Really, we want to make it community focused, but also paying artists to do the things that they're doing. And they look at us when we're doing the projects as people that are doing construction work. So although it is fun, cool, unique artwork, it's treated as if it's a construction project with lifts, insurance, permits, and kind of all the elements that go into that. Based on doing some of the work in murals that we've done, right now we're about 19 artists for the murals. Some of them are 10 feet tall by 10 feet, and some are 60 feet by 45 to 50 feet. So these are large-scale pieces. This one that you see behind is actually about 140 feet by about 15 feet by artist Liz Zunan. So Liz is a children's book illustrator. And so Liz was taking drawings that were probably the size of maybe 2 or 3 inches or that you would see in a book. And then we ended up scaling them to be about 8 to 10 feet. And in each figure, for this piece specifically, was about movement, dance, flow, body, and energy. So Liz, as part of the inspiration, was never lose that creative energy. Even as we get older, still have that energy and playfulness. So the pieces and the figures that are there are actually Liz's family that she then incorporated into the actual mural piece. So when people walk by and experience this, they go to the parking garage or they're going to Cap Rep or the Palace Theater. This is one of the long walkways to get to those locations. And actually, the lights that you'll see above some of them actually create this glow. So it's almost like these performers are on this stage or in this performance. And then these red curtains that are draped are actually like they're on the stage performing. So each artist we actually bring to the location to try to figure out what's the inspiration, what does the artist want to share, what do they want to say. And the left-hand side, you'll see a piece of paper. That's one of the mock-ups that Liz created. And when we do the mock-ups, we actually have conversations where we do bike tours and we invite people out to the community to hear the artists speak about their work. To me, I'd much rather them all be here to speak about the work because it's really exciting to kind of hear their passion and excitement for this being Liz's first piece. So I don't know if you've ever painted your house or a kitchen or anything. Painting anything for 2 weeks is a long time, from 8 in the morning till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. But it is a passion and it is a love, and actually artists give their all when they're creating these pieces. These community talks we do actually with bike tours, walking tours, school tours. So at any time, we actually have a few coming up this year. I'll share some information so you could join. But it's actually a pretty exciting way for artists to share a little bit more. This is one of the mock-ups. So the first mock-up is the drawing. Second was when it was added to color, and the one that Liz was holding. So you can kind of see the progression between the stories and kind of the energy of it. And this process of artists creating, artists getting paid. As an artist myself, it's important to make money. We want people to be valued. We want people to be able to sustain the work that they're doing. And it's also adding a lot of goodness to the community. And if we start with paying people to do the things they love, they can do more of that. What we strive to do is make sure people get opportunities. So that way those opportunities, they don't have to go to other cities or other states or other locations. They can actually stay here and create and add their energy. For the pieces when we go on tours, so this one's a little bit different than the Capitol Walls mural program, but kind of how they're all connected because it's in public places. There was a boarded up building in downtown next to the gallery. And it looked boarded up, which doesn't add like a good sense of life and energy to the space. So we actually worked with 10 local photographers. And so you have the photographer mentor and then the students. And we actually walked around downtown Albany giving kids cameras, Kodaks, $3,000 cameras, Polaroids, smartphones, iPhones. And the idea was to let kids have opportunities to take photos with things that they might not have access to. And then take those photos and then blow those up. So we actually did a technique where it's like wheat pasting, where we pasted all of their artwork along the side of the building. Again, that was to add more energy to the space, but also let kids see their work in a public space. So it's not necessarily in a space where people have to pay to access it. And now they actually get to have their work shown in a public space. This wall has since come down, and we actually saved sections of these pieces. And the idea is that these are kind of pop-up projects where maybe even for a month or two, these pieces stay there. But it does add a sense of community in place where people get to see different points of view. This one was called Kid's Eye View. Most of the individuals were maybe 7 to maybe 14 years old. So they're shooting shots sometimes from down here, which as adults, we look at perspective and we try to frame things in the way we think they should be done. With kids, if you give them cameras, they're just going to have fun with it. And that was kind of an exciting part, is to let them explore the city and just get different perspectives and views. These, again, all of the work that we do is like with partnerships. So this one is with the Downtown Albany Bid. It's the Nipper project. So Nipper is the RCA dog that's in downtown Albany on one of the buildings. So the Downtown Bid actually supported and funded these opportunities for artists to get commissioned to do these types of projects. There was actually 2 rounds of this project because it was successful, because these artists, again, created different stories with each of their dogs or inspirations. And really it added like a little unique flavor. And then when you piece these things together, you actually walk around places and you get to explore and think of like, what is happening here? What are these artists trying to say? What is the community trying to say? This is obviously a presentation, but as far as like favorite places, does anybody have a favorite place that they do like to see artwork or that you've seen throughout your days of existing? Yes?
Well, I wonder if your group has anything to do with this work I see when I'm driving to school on 787. It
Yes.
It's like graffiti blocks.
Yeah.
They're super colorful.
Yep.
And they're very professional.
Yeah.
Is that your group that?
It's not. Pastel Paints is a local paint provider, but there is a section where graffiti artists, street artists, actually have decent size visuals of usually a name or a sign. We're not connected with it, but it is a really artistic form. And I guess that's kind of also part of the conversation of graffiti art, street art's kind of the starting of it, where it's been criminalized. There's a lot of issue with vandalization. So we try to be mindful when we do all of our work, that we get permits, we get approvals, and we try to make sure that it's done to where the artists aren't getting in opportunities to get in trouble. Some of the artists we have worked with have been arrested for graffiti and vandalism and since turned their direction to actually do public art. Part of what we also want to try to do is connect with community and individuals that if that's something they just want to express, we want to say, well, do that, but now get paid for it and maybe do it larger. And we want to try to focus on inspiring, educating, and uplifting the community. But I do know what you're talking about. It is hard to get photos too because it's off of the thruway.
Right, but it's almost like it was a spot for graffiti artists.
Yep.
They finally just said, all right, let's divide this into like 5 chunks.
Yep.
Have that to whoever.
Yeah, and
But they look much nicer than graffiti.
yeah, I think if you have more time, you can do those levels of detail and color blending, things like that. In some cities, they actually have graffiti parks where full spaces would just be graffiti, which is just writing on a wall, where every person here could actually write something. And then in that community, if it's really good, people won't write over it. And if it's not good or they can do better, they'll write over it. And then it kind of makes the awareness or increase the level of what graffiti or what good graffiti is. Is there anybody else that has spaces that they have seen? Troy? Yep.
Alternate 7.
Yep.
But they do it on the cement caissons for the overpass.
Yep. Yeah, so in Troy they have a United line, which is an artist, Jade Warwick, that we worked with that I'll show in a little while. That was the lead artist for that project. And that's kind of the exciting thing is artwork is kind of scattering. It's been around for many years. More recently, I think people are starting to feel more comfortable appreciating it or understanding the value that it has, not just for the community, but for the artists. Some of the artists that we've worked with after these projects have left their full-time jobs to pursue art making full-time. So that's something where it's, sometimes you just need that seed planted and the support, the foundation of funds that then opens you up to take it on as a consulting or entrepreneuring of artwork. Any other places of people that have traveled that have seen artwork? No? Yeah? Tons. All right, cool. Airports, yeah. So Philadelphia has a really cool public art collection. They've been doing it for like 30 years. And that's kind of the inspiration for a lot of the work. Montreal has a lot, Iceland has a lot, major cities have a lot of art. And really, I think it makes the world better when artists get to share their world kind of in a larger scale. So that way it's not in a gallery or a museum or in a setting where you have to feel like you have to have the knowledge to appreciate art or feel like you have the money to appreciate it. If it's in the street, anybody can look at it. And they might not like every single piece, but the idea is there might be a piece that does connect with them and sparks that change. Yes?
The Clark Museum down in Massachusetts.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good stuff too there. Yeah, so we always try to encourage people just to look around and see kind of unique things that are going on because it really does break up the everyday spaces. And I think it makes cities and places a little bit more unique because if you go places, they have buildings and structures. So what makes it unique is all of the stuff that you see is only happening in the capital region with this work. It's nowhere else in the world. So to me, it's super exciting and special. This one, Art for Everyone, ties into, again, it's not just the murals where artists are getting commissioned to do large pieces. It's starting young kids off, also using their mind to create and explore. So this one was done in April, probably about 7 years ago, and it was during Earth Month or Earth Day, where we had kids actually go around and clean up the community. So the kids were cleaning up the community. We brought all the stuff back, which is in the top left-hand corner, and then repurposed it, recycled it, and then made these robot creatures. And the idea is to get people to be aware of the community, what we do with our trash, what we do with items that are scattered around the streets, and how do we repurpose it, reimagine it, and actually exercise our minds to say, like, what could this be? So a lot of the work that we do is with young individuals, but also artist mentors. And the goal is to try to inspire younger people to then be the artist mentor that then they could be the mentor to younger people when they're in the future. A lot of it is these recycled robots. Again, when we do these, we're going into the ground, so you're calling 1-800-DIG, which is to make sure that you don't hit any wires. There's a lot of things that go into just making this happen, and then the structure of making sure it doesn't fall on somebody if the wind blows. So all of the projects and things that we work on, we have to treat it as if, if something happened to somebody while they're appreciating it, we want to avoid any kind of scenario. So we tend to do things the right way just to make sure it's done and that nobody is put in harm's way. We did learn a lot from this because this one actually, people then added to it. They thought that they could put their trash or belongings next to it, so it actually created a little gathering spot. So then we put a sign there for people to say, like, we don't want more trash. But it was a good question of what do people do with their trash when they're done with it if there's not proper garbage cans. So now there's actually garbage cans plenty around this area, and it really maybe helps address some issues just by doing a piece of artwork. The visiting artists that we work with, so a lot of the youth programs are local artists. The visiting artist is something that we introduced on our third mural, which is done by Hellbent. He's the artist that created this. He was from Queens at the time, and we brought Hellbent up and we said, here's what we're looking to do. His style is super unique, and I don't see anybody locally doing that, but the visual is what we were looking for. So after having conversations, we then share who Albany is, what this region is. So they did research and came up with this mock-up, which you can see from 787, the Skyway, or the walkway to Jennings Landing. It really does have a kind of an eye-catching pop to it. And the idea is that bridge that you leave the city of Albany on, right here, in my mind I was thinking it's like a gift as people go. It's almost like wrapping paper to where it's just vibrant, colorful, and that's kind of the last thing they see as they leave the city. But the artists added some tulips for some of the Dutch heritage. They did some Art Deco design. So some of these things just from them coming up from the city, exploring the plaza, looking at the collection there, and then being an ambassador for Albany about being a place where artists can create and get opportunities. So not just always being a local and regional artist selection, is we want to also welcome other people from different locations to the community as well, because then that's where I think conversations happen, connections happen, and it also doesn't keep us in a bubble of just us. We want everyone. Anybody guess at how long this piece took to create? There's, I guess, one right answer, so good luck. There's plenty of wrong answers, but it's okay. But just guess-wise, if you've painted before, could you imagine how long it would take to paint? A month? 6 months? 2 weeks. Yeah, so 2 weeks. This one was also a good learning experience. We had the artists actually lining it up, and this one wasn't projected or used with a grid. We actually used this blue rope where you kind of pull it and it snaps a line. So we had somebody standing at the top of the structure, the third floor, and then also down here to create this like straight line. And then the artist is kind of sitting from ground, kind of looking at all of these angles. So even just creating the layout of it was about a day just to map out where it would be. And then when we're painting, rolling, priming, there's 2 coats of paint. And then these are actually done with stencils. So the pattern itself, we're on a lift probably from here to here, holding a stencil when it's windy, using spray paint sometimes. You're getting some of that pushback, you're getting the wind rocking you, all while just trying to make sure that the piece kind of connects, so that way when you are looking at it from afar, it actually looks like a cohesive piece.
How did you actually create the lines?
These lines?
Yeah.
So we actually held from down here, the middle, and there's a chalk wheel where you extend it, and then you flick it, and it leaves just like a soft pattern. And then from there, you're getting super close to the wall, and then you're just edging it in. And then once you edge it, then you can just roll out the rest of it. But yeah, that one we had about 5 people working on, which was the most people at one time. So 2 weeks, but 5 humans of 2 weeks of that. And And then about gallons of paint, I think it was about 21 gallons of paint. Which brings us into the how. So this one was Oscar Bogran and Deshawn Skills Serrano. Again, this is from before the wall, which was all of this. We then primed it. So this used to be an old television station. Right now it's Restore community building. And part of that conversation was, how do we respect the history of what the building was? But also, Restore might not be there for the next 20 or 30 years, so what can we do that is a little bit mindful? So this thing down here, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's actually on those TVs. So when the color codes are correcting, we tried to give a little nod of the television activities that happen there, and that kind of flowing down, but then kind of this imagine in this world and this young person having kind of the world in their hand, with, again, inspirational words, things that would hopefully inspire really anyone, not just young individuals, but we really want to make sure when people go by this location, again, it looked like that for a long time with a big gray square here, probably from, or maybe it was higher up from where the television was with these like little antennas. And then we thought it looked better this way. So we go to the city, we work with the artists, they do renderings, we do scale to try to see how things look and how people connect with it. And up here, we actually had the artists sign their names. Sometimes if it's lower to the ground, that actually encourages other people to sign the piece if it's not theirs. So by putting it higher up, you can distinguish that these are the creative people that got commissioned for the work. And the idea with this is, again, I've worked with Oscar and Deshawn for many years. They're multidiscipline poets. We work at youth facilities, teaching kids about the power of art, power of word, and how creative expression is a good outlet as opposed to turning into sometimes trouble, that this can be one of those platforms to express yourself. The top left was created with a projector, so that was hand-drawn, but we actually projected it. So we were probably standing from here to maybe that back wall to scale the piece up. So then you're just doing a quick outline just to get the figure. And then from there, everything else, they just freehand. So it's pretty remarkable work. This is the second mural that we did in Schenectady. The first one we did on Albany Street, which I'll probably show a little later on, with an artist named Ray Frazier, which was local to Schenectady. So we're excited that we'll have more opportunities in the future also there. And as far as location, again, this is one of the parking garages next to 48 Hudson, which is in downtown Albany. It's considered one of the oldest buildings in the city of Albany. So when you're standing in the street, part of the site visits that we do is, how do people see this piece? What's it next to? What's the surrounding? So that way it just isn't just thrown there. And that oldest building in Albany is to the left of this mural across the street. And in my mind, I saw that we're still here. We're still doing things. The city is still active. It was interesting while we were working on this. This was in the evening. Anybody guess how long this took? 2 weeks. Anybody else? Anybody else? 3 days. So this one was 3 days, but it was from like 8 o'clock at night till 4 or 5 in the morning. And it was probably about 39 hours of work. And it was outlining it, then doing the pinstripes. You'll see some of the markings for like the spray paint. We actually were doing this next to one of the pubs, and at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when people leave those pubs, they're excited to share their thoughts on the work that we were doing, which was exciting because we love hearing things, but somebody mentioned that rhythm actually isn't like a good rhythm. So they were studying at Albany Med, and they were sharing their perspective of what that was, which was exciting to hear their thoughts because now that's more information. But when the artist created it, that was what they wanted. And that heartbeat actually connects to the heart, which then goes to the spray paint can, which is in their hand. So it's almost like that heartbeat is in their art, is who they are, that is their existing. So Nick Walker is the artist to the left. He actually was from the UK, worked with an artist named Banksy when they were growing up. So Banksy is a pretty well-known street artist that nobody really knows, but there are artists that actually have worked with that individual. that then travel the world doing their work. So Nick Walker's pieces, he's one of our national, international artists, but lives now in New York City. He has work in Dubai, Paris, New York City, Albany. All over the world he travels, gets commissioned. He has a show in Japan right now. So the work that Nick does is well respected in the arts community. And then again, to have an artist at that level also then highlight Albany and then all of the artists that are in our community doing work, it kind of, I think, helps level the field and also bring our artists to a level of, wow, we're all doing this work in the community. So it's pretty exciting. And as far as the where, we've gone to do Schenectady, Albany, we have a decent amount. There are a few cities coming to a city near you. Murals that are happening in the next year. There is funding that some cities have received to help support public art. And our idea isn't to go to those communities and do what we think. It's work with artists in those communities and see what they want to do and then try to provide the resources to make sure they can do all of their work. These are other locations. So the one on the right is under the Skyway or the exit ramp of the city of Albany. The one on the left is actually the Hellbent mural. So you can kind of see to scale, just that section there is pretty massive wall. There were many of those. And our dream is to do that big building back here. Has anybody ever seen that location? Yeah. So if somebody were to say, what do you want? What would you imagine being at that location? What would you think? What would you want? I actually love the Rubik's Cube. I really do. Are you joking with me? All right. I think that would be the best idea, just as a joke. A whale. A whale could be kind of cool.
An image of a dumpster and a demolition.
A mural of that on that building? That's funny. Yeah, so the cool thing is it could be potentially anything. Also, if we did anything, nobody would be happy with it because it's never going to be something that people are like, that's exactly what it should have been. So when doing the work, there's also a lot of responsibility that goes along with it because it could be, I think the Rubik's Cube is fun. I'll go back to that just because nobody knows what to do with it. / it's a square. It would be the world's largest Rubik's Cube, which I think would be kind of fun in the city skyline to have that with the city skyline. Maybe they would sponsor it, Rubik's Cube, if you're around. I think there is a Rubik's Cube convention coming to Albany in April, so if anybody wants to help advocate for that. It would be a lot of work. Even just guesstimating paint-wise, I think in cost, like $200,000-$300,000, unless they were sponsors, because you need lifts, you're going over train tracks, which you might not be able to do, so then you would have to figure out ways to go around the train tracks, suspended from the actual roof itself, which we don't know if it's structurally sound. So all of those things, and then the money, and then the artists, and then what does the message mean? Or do we want to see a big logo there that has a sign that says purchase whatever the product is? Those are other challenges, is that if we don't use art in public spaces as a way to share and express, it will be bought up by somebody that will put a logo there or try to advertise to us. So then you get into this conversation of art and advertisement of how does that work? Because art can advertise things, but we also don't want artists to change necessarily why they're doing the piece to buy a product. We want them to create, and that will bring attention to the nearby area. But there's kind of a balance between the commercial aspect of it and then also the artistic creative freedom that we try to balance to where we always want artists to be the ones sharing a story, sharing a message. Marketing is important. It does a lot of exciting things, but there is a fine line to walk to make sure that artists are doing what they want and respecting the locations that they're at. Also, side note, these three, Arzu, Vanessa, NDA, and Rosie Sunshine, I don't want to skip over them because I don't have more of their work in this slideshow. These murals were actually all done within a 2-month timeline. So while we were working on this one, Arzu started. And then when Arzu was almost finished, we then started with Nick's. And then when Nick's was almost done, we went to Rosie's. And we actually shared lifts. So then when we're like budgeting and planning of how do we make all of these happen, how do we order enough paints, we tried to share things. So then artists are actually connecting, even though all of their works are separate. This message that we shared with the artists was bridges connect. So from A to B, what is your connection? So each artist had their interpretation, but they all had the same cue of how do things connect? And if you go on one of the tours, you'll actually hear some of it. But these are like origami boats that Arzu created. And this blue water is like motion and movement. Arzu immigrated from Iran to Canada, and then from Canada to the States, and actually is a video game designer and artist that was living in the region for many years, and just moved out to the West Coast. So you hear of like video game industries where you have people that do storyboarding and designing. Arzu was like one of those artists that would sit on a computer to design. This was Arzu's first mural. Now it's larger than life. Arzu completed this project with a brush that size. And it was because she enjoyed the process of being so close to it, as opposed to rolling all of it. So that one had a really cool story. All of them really do. So go on the tour if you can make it, because there'll be more for it. This one is another exciting piece about artists sharing stories, ideas, perspectives. The left-hand side is kind of like how we mock it up. So when we saw the left-hand side, it was an open space. We do site visits where we just like walk around the community and we look and say like, that could maybe be something, that location could be something. We try to figure out where these spaces are, how people will view them, and then who owns them, who will give us permission. This owner actually said creative control, whatever you want to create, you can do. So we worked with artist Trash Kid Art, Jade Warwick, who did the project in Troy, that United Line mural project, where there was, I think, maybe 16 or 17 different murals. So this was Jade's first mural, which was in Albany at that scale of 50, all of that. That was a big space. So we mocked off the 46 by 50 feet, and then realized that the little sunflower, we could actually extend. So this one was projected by pieces. So the flowers was one piece, the green stem going up, the figure was also projected, and we tried to scale it to the location. So when you're designing or drawing, it's this, but when you get on the wall, sometimes you have to respond well to it. So we were actually able to extend up to that like little 22 by 9 foot section. And this one is called Escape to Nature. So Jade wanted to make it to where a person of color was escaping to nature, finding their comfort, finding their peace, finding their comfort space, and really just highlighting BIPOC community and LGBTQ plus individuals. And to see this larger than life was super exciting. So while we were working on this, it was actually a father with a young black girl, and she looked up and she said, "Look, Dad, it's me." So to have that father then come to us and say, like, by doing this piece, my daughter now feels seen. It gives me kind of chills, and it's kind of amazing, but we should do more of that. We should make it to where people feel seen in these projects, to where people are represented, and to where they get to share a perspective, to where it could be something that's beautiful, hopeful, exciting, and also an opportunity for artists to live out their dreams. Jade was, maybe still is, afraid of heights. So part of it was, how do we get that high? So we're on this lift together, going through the process, learning how to operate the lift. When it's windy out, this machine's kind of bouncing like this, but you're actually still trying to paint like steady lines. So for an artist, for the first time, to overcome a lot of fears and then also to create a piece so beautiful was truly special. And this Jade artist does work all over the community, has multiple commissions. And really, it's just planting seeds where artists can do a lot of creative things. They just need the resources and opportunities. Ooh. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of that same location. So you can kind of see the scale. And it's right on Broadway. So it is something that is super visible. And you can kind of see the process of doing step by step, some of it like days. This was done in October. So think of October weather where it's kind of cool, kind of windy. I think when the lifts got dropped off, it was raining outside. So you're spending months of work, and then the first day it rains. So we're thinking, what can we do? We can't paint on the wall. It's actually aluminum siding, so then there's other challenges of when you're painting on surfaces, how does aluminum respond to the paint? When it's cold, when it's hot, how does it stick? How long does it need to cure to that location? When the sun comes up, and it hit the wall in the morning, especially in October, it's, like frost almost, where the walls are wet, and you can kind of see these like little drip marks. Same with your grass, kind of has like a little frost on it. These walls every day we had to wait for the sun to heat it up enough to order it to paint on it, because otherwise it was cold from storing the cold air throughout the evening time. In each mural, there's like a specific set of like details and elements that we have to consider because we want it to last. This paint, they say, will last 15 to 20 years. So then it's awesome. What happens in 15, 20 years? Does another artist get a chance to create something? So we actually might be creating spaces for people that are in middle school right now that we don't even know yet that might be doing a piece in 2050 in that same location because it needs to always have something. And you'll see somebody got up on the roof. There's some graffiti up in those locations. We've been super fortunate and thankful that the mural work that we've done, nobody's vandalized, which is the other thing is I think art and public art really deters people from wanting to destroy or to leave their mark on spaces where there is artwork. People might go near locations, but if they respect it and they see the piece, there is kind of this code of people won't touch it, which is exciting. And that's also building relationships in the community. There's artists that we work with that know people that do street art or do graffiti, and that if we can try to inspire people to respect what's being created and respect other people's things, how do we now also get those artist opportunities? And right now, you know, they're up on the tops of roofs. It's not really safe. You know, the roof could fall in. There's a lot of elements to where it's not maybe the best way, but it is something that artists just want to express and they just want to be heard. So we don't mind it. We just want to try to figure out how can we get artists to get paid for what they're doing. This is another one that was a boarded up building. In downtown Albany, there's a business called, oh, yes.
I just had an interesting anecdote. Trash Kid Art did work for the Free Food
Yes,
Project.
correct.
And we hosted Jamela like 2 years ago for this program.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, so Jamela, we worked with on the free food fridge with like artwork. The gallery, we had one of the fridges in our front of our location, and Jade, I think probably did 4 or 5 of the murals on the fridges, which is super exciting. And that's kind of the thing is connecting community, other initiatives, because it's not just about cool, fun, pretty art. It's connecting resources and community members and conversations together. So it is exciting when we kind of circle all of these things together. So this one, sorry, was another boarded up space on Pearl Street while they were doing construction. Cider Belly was next door. And while we were walking to get a donut, we're like, this is sitting here. We don't want to look at this for however long. Can we work? So we worked with the landlord, worked with the city, commissioned an artist, Rachel Baxter, to create this piece, which Rachel also did an abstract piece. So now artists kind of have multi-range as far as the skills that they can do. This one was based off of her travels when she was in Alaska, so she brought back kind of that energy. But it actually went down the whole length of the building, and there's probably still another 4 or 5 feet to that building itself. And that one was done after Rachel was teaching. Rachel was a professor working 2 jobs and then doing this in the evening time. And I think that's kind of the exciting part is like when artists get the opportunities, it's like we just got to show up, do what we can, and prioritize creating it because unfortunately there's still not a lot of opportunities to do public artwork. As far as trusting the process, kind of going through the steps, the building on the left is actually what it was. This middle piece is actually the mock-up that we presented to the city because it's also in a historic location, so we had to go to the Historic Resources Commission to get approval. This is many months in the making. And then this one on the right is actually when paint got up, gridded out, so you can kind of see the alphabet on the side and then the numbers across. So the artist is working from a sheet of paper using A3, A6, B6 to create whatever they see in that box. So it's super abstract, but then when you piece it all together, it actually creates the outline. You have a question?
In your research, I know these are pretty much recent contemporary pieces that you're doing, but have you noticed in the research that environmental concerns, pollution, road salt getting up in the atmosphere affects the pigments over time?
Yes and no. So some of the work some of the paint that the artists use, we also have to get an environmental study done on the work before and after the pieces that we have to submit as part of our applications. The salts hasn't really created any challenges for any of like the actual artwork. The concern obviously is like spray paint, aerosol, and that kind of just not in generally being good for. Correct, yeah. Yeah, but there is spray paint actually in a paint company that we're researching that actually helps cleanse the air even while it's on the wall. So that's something we're going to be looking into more.
Are these oil-based or acrylic?
These are acrylics. So this is kind of ABC, knowing kind of the process. And when Boogie Res, they're a duo, they actually worked on this piece together. I saw it on Instagram, maybe like 5 years ago, just on looking at artwork, because that's a good way to access creativity. And I reached out saying, if there's ever an opportunity, would you come to Albany? And they said yes. And 2 years ago, they came up. It was the left wall, primed it. That was the work, digital mock-up. And it was the first time that they ever used the grid system, which is exciting when artists are super talented and it's the first for them to do something to where it was a different process, because they could have projected it, which would have been a little bit easier. But this actually created a little challenge, but they wanted to experiment. And I think it was exciting for me to be like, that's exciting. The left one is an actual print of the artwork that was created. And that's Risa Boogie. So that's the artist that created it. Rez is Risa's partner that worked on it together. So you can see the scale of it. I mean, it's quite large, but each of these pieces actually have phrases. It says, "You are necessary beyond explanation. Your strength moves mountains. You are the creators. We are resilient. You are a masterpiece." And then Sawabona is a greeting of, "I see you, I appreciate you, I value your existence." And so again, for this to be in the city next to a lot of historic buildings, Kiernan Plaza is also nearby, to see this beautiful, vibrant, colorful work of art come to life. And Risa is actually Poughkeepsie, Japanese born, moved here when I think they were 8 or 9 years old. And Rez actually has family in the capital region, so it was nice to welcome them back to Albany, but then also knowing that their Poughkeepsie studio space, and they actually have a studio space in the World Trade Center, like right now on the 69th floor. And it's just a wide open space where there's probably about 15 artists that just get to use it as a studio space. So again, imagine an opportunity to create in one of the tallest buildings in the state, but then also having a lot of opportunities to make more magic is super exciting. Anybody questions so far? Cool, we're gonna keep going. Ooh, awesome. So this one is Connect, Create, Get Involved, which this is the last slide, so I don't know what time it is, but hopefully it's around whatever time we need. But it's more of a conversation. If people want to get involved, have ideas, have thoughts, what you want to see, I want to have a conversation. So thank you, at least for the presentation part, and now hopefully we can just talk if you have some time. Any questions, thoughts, ideas?
I just wanted to share something. I had an opportunity, which was great fun, to be involved in the mural in the rail trail out in
Awesome.
Florida.
Very cool.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's the exciting part, is there is a lot of like pockets of things happening, and I think it's special because then it's unique to the community, unique to the members that are making it. But there is a lot of cool artworks along that trail as well. And I think now they have like a little library piece that Dee Collin is one of the artists that did a mural that has this little installation. So a lot of artists are finding opportunities, and the good part is we just need to create more so that way they can keep doing it. Any other thoughts, ideas, questions? Yes.
Just was wondering, I think I heard you mention that there's upcoming projects.
Yes.
So what are some of those projects that are coming up the way?
So upcoming projects, so some are in contract with getting permits, so if everything goes well, I don't want to not have them go well. In downtown Albany, there would be a few. In Cohoes, there's opportunities for some projects to happen. In the city of Schenectady, there's projects that we're working on. Downtown Albany, just through partners and other organizations. I could send you a list, or / if you want to join an email, because then I can give you kind of the full details. But we do have, for example, like a photo regional coming up at the gallery, where there's probably about 15 artists that just get to use it as a studio space. So again, imagine an opportunity to create in one of the tallest buildings in the state. So we're going to do photographer mentors working with youth in the community. So then they get to see a lot of amazing artwork by hundreds of photographers, but then they also have the opportunity to talk to those photographers, take their own photos. So even though they're not necessarily murals, it's still that kind of youth mentorship with creatives kind of leading the way. I'm trying to think of what else. There's probably a lot. I'm just blanking. I apologize. Yes?
Will you be encouraging any mentoring of artists with special needs?
Yes. So we have worked at some facilities where individuals had some needs. So at the Center for Disabilities, for example, we actually worked with the residents and clients that were there with a local artist as well that does a lot of support work. And actually those individuals created like a 16-foot mural that's in the facility. And it also depicted imagery and visuals of people that are represented in that space. That's not for like the public viewing, just because it is like in the facility. But we do a lot of small projects, or not small projects, they're large, but a lot of scale where they're inside of a school. Right now we're at North Albany Middle School, so that's like another facility where we'll go in and it's closed off to the public, but the kids that are there get to create kind of their own environment. At the Connect Center in Cohoes is another organization where artist mentors and community got to create murals inside of their facility just to create a safe space for the kids to go to and play games, do Legos, have conversations, learn about entrepreneurship, resume building. So a lot of the work is very specific to the organization. We're working on one about mental health awareness and suicide prevention and awareness, where we can now have conversations, community meetings, to where individuals get to come to the meeting, workshops, work with local artists, work with facilities and specialists and organizations to offer guidance and support as well. So maybe this piece that's created can spark a difference or help relieve energy, or maybe just process through emotions of people that have been lost. We've done one in 2020 where it was a traveling mural. It was a movable mural with two local artists in the United Way for COVID about people that were lost. So people could go to this mural, and if somebody was lost, they can write a memory on a sticker that got attached to the mural. Or it was also flowers that were depicted of together, hope, and kind of harmony and trying to process, because whether people lost people or they didn't lose people, it still affected everyone. So every subject or every topic, there could be a visual art piece that's connected to helping and healing. We're at the Berkshire Center for Youth, which is a facility where young individuals are incarcerated. And we go to the facility and do workshops of drawing, painting, writing, the power of word, learning about the roots of like hip hop or poetry or slam poetry. They actually did a mural in the facility at in their lunchroom that says "The sky's the limit." So when we go to these environments, some of these kids are in a lot of trouble, and because they're so young, we don't think that's the end of their existence. We know that they did something that might have been not great, but how do you help them see that this is just a page in a story, or just like part of their story, but it's not everything? So bringing artists in that have similar experiences to share with them that you can get out of this. And there's authors that write books about going to prison and then getting out, writing a book about entrepreneurship and saying that you can be successful and you don't have to take these other paths. So when we do the public art or any community art, it's not just about the cool kind of element. It's like it actually can heal people and transform people's life. So for us, it's everyone. We want to try to figure out how to make it special and unique, and then figure out the resources that are needed for that specific project. So that was a long answer to your question, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. I think what art can do. Not again, poetry, music, culinary, like all of these things that people express, we just need more of it. Any other thoughts, ideas? Because I could talk for hours. No? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. And I have like cards that I'll hand out with like the maps and murals, just so that way you could learn more about it. But the artists are all amazing, and this was maybe like 40% of the stuff that we've done, maybe 30%. There's more to be part of, so thank you.